What's up? It's Let's Write Tonight. I'm working on Deepriver in the Shadows of Lordaeron, Chapter 4. I'm on 33,474 words. And what I'm doing is I'm putting together a character sheet that I had written for my World of Warcraft character years ago. And I'm taking these micro chapters that I'd written for him and I'm expanding upon those into a full-length story for this character. And the goal is to actually publish this by the end of the summer. So that's what I'm up to. I do this Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. And if you're joining me, I hope you have your own story as well. So let's get going. For those listening with the horrible choppiness of some of the sound, I'm still working on that. I don't have a solution yet. Hmm. There it is. Turret. Staircase leading to the tower's turret. What is going on over there? So in World of Warcraft, right, you have roleplay servers, and what people do is they'll create their character, they'll create a character sheet using their roleplay app, and they'll put their in-character personality together. And what they use that for is like Dungeons and Dragons. It's like that, but in game. So you'll have player created events and activities that make the game immense and really replayable. That's why I'm still here. Not everyone's very good. There's different qualities of roleplay, as you can see. Some are just griefers and trolls. Some just aren't good. What you're not seeing is all the chat that's going on. You're not missing much. I don't even have the general chat showing when I play. I've noticed in my writing I use the word witch a lot, as in brushed aside the cracked and faded tribal war paint which still clung to his forehead and snout. Witch, 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 witch. I wonder if there's a word count, like a way I can... Hold on, we're going to do some quick research here. I need to know how to do a specific word count. How do I perform a word count using Microsoft Word for a specific word in a document? Okay, here we go. So, Control F, which ooh, 108 times. I feel like I use which too much. What is an alternative? Okay, well, which is just one of those words, I guess. You're gonna use a lot. Sal'journ brushed aside the loose hair hanging. His hair draped. In front of his Lichfire eyes, revealing the cracked and faded tribal war paint that, we'll use the word that, still clung. Revealing the cracked and faded tribal war paint that still clung to his forehead and snout. As Sal'journ pulled himself away from the wall, the tips of his horns snagged upon the loose vines which had grown around and ensnared. Okay, so that's just not even a complete sentence. What is that dude talking about? Brushed aside the loose hair draped in front of his Lichfire eyes. I don't know how often I need to remind the reader that he has, in fact, Lichfire eyes, which is to say, kind of this blue flame that comes out of them. That's a characteristic of Death Knights. I think the reader's going to get the idea. So it's one of those things where once I've adequately described him early in the book, I can lay off and the reader can just intuit certain aspects of a character without me having to remind them what he looks like. Sal'journ brushed aside the loose hair draped in front of his eyes, revealing the cracked and faded tribal war paint that still clung to his forehead and snout. As Sal'journ pulled himself away from the wall, the tips of his horns... Maybe I don't even need that. Which had ensnared them as he rested. Sal'journ huffed in frustration, sending a plume of dust out from his nostrils. The mouse squeaked, burying itself in the shelter of Sal'journ's thick mane. To escape the vine's thorns. I guess I need to ask myself why I need this, other than to illustrate that he's been sitting at this particular spot for a long time. So in terms of characters that I have, I've got Sal'journ, the mouse, and soon I'm going to have Abe Winters. I also already have Joshua. I do not yet have Bartok. Oh, Zeko Timekeeper. Don't need that. Don't need that. Oh, yes, I do. Don't need that. I don't have anything on these two yet. Okay. Just Bow, Zeko, mouse squealed, burying itself in the shelter of Sal'journ's thick mane to escape the vines. And you know, it took me 5 weeks to get through chapter 2, so if this looks like a grueling, slow process, it is. But it's okay, because the story's worth it. If you want to see what I've been up to, check out that Ko-Fi link there below the window frame here. Right there. And that is where I post my updates with the story. I've actually got a book cover art commissioned, and I should be expecting that in the next week or so. Okay. Okay, so we got Sal to move out. And the reason he's moving out is because he is not ready for the summer trades. So let's see. Sal'journ knew that the arrival of spring meant the return of the local herds. who had wandered south to escape the frigid coastal air. It also meant that the traders who valued their furs would soon resume their transits along the roads to the south. Along the roads just to the south. I suppose we have lingered long enough, he grunted. Shifting his hooves beneath him, Sal'journ clutched the windowsill for support and huffed deeply as he heaved himself to his feet. Standing upright in the armory, Sal'journ firmly patted his shoulders and forearms free of the remaining dust. I'll be honest, I don't think I need this at all. Let me get rid of that. Really, I should catalog. Instead of deleting, I should like copy and cut and paste text that I just don't use just so that I can demonstrate. I'm going to do that. I wish I had done that at the beginning. I think just to make a point, I'm going to do that. We're going to call it dustbin. All right, that's what we're doing. I've got it set up. So I'm going to undo that. Okay. That's what we're going to do. I think that's a good way of... Okay, there we go. Forward. Uh-oh, did I delete something again? We won't worry about that. All right, so today is officially the first day. This is the 70th episode I've streamed. And it's the first day that I've started the dustbin for Deepriver. And that was 59 words. Poof. Poof. Gone. What's everyone jumping around for? What are you doing, mad lad? I want to try something else while we're doing new things. Liam Neeson. Let's try it. I'm doing this AI to text to AI voiceover. So I want to see if read back to me, the text sounds good or not. What? I guess it's loading. Okay. Sal'journ's grin faded. As he caught a glimpse of the mouse. I think we're still working on this. From behind the thick weave of grass emerged a field mouse, gripping the back of its head to shake. And shaking moisture out of its fur, gripping the back of its head and shaking the moisture out of its fur with its tiny paws. The mouse wrung itself free of the morning dew which had gathered on its journey. Stretching to its fullest, on the cobblestone, it yawned widely and basked in the warmth of the spring sun. As it basked in the warmth of the spring sun. Once dried, mouse perked its head up to sniff the air, shifting its ears from side to side. Deeming it safe, the mouse continued its journey in search. Mouse resumed its journey in search of materials for its nest. Scurrying along the stony path, the mouse followed. The mouse confidently followed a familiar route as it handrailed a mossy stone wall until it arrived at an aged wooden pole. Ascending the pole, the mouse weaved its way through the dangling folds and tattered remains of a war banner, which faintly bore a sigil of an outward-facing palm of a silver hand which overlay the silver cross. From atop the banner, the mouse effortlessly hopped onto the top of the wall. weaving back and forth over the wall's rough and splintered surface. The mouse progressed along its path until it reached the face of the conjoined stone. See, this is tough. Until it reached the face of the stone tower, which, though, the wall joined. On the wall was a large and jagged gateway leading inside. Splitting the wall was a large and jagged crack. Which led the way inside. Just large enough to fit through. The mouse wiggled its way. Mouse, where am I? The mouse wiggled its. The mouse wiggled. The mouse wiggled its way through the cramped and webby corridor into the towers. Into the tower's interior. Squeaking in anger. As its fat belly snagged. As its fat belly wedged the mouse. Not necessary. Well, but I do want to give the mouse some personality. Splitting the wall was a large and jagged crack which led inside. Just large enough to fit through. The mouse wiggled its way through the cramped and webby corridor into the tower's interior, squeaking in frustration as its fat belly wedged. It stuck. Several times. Inside the armory were all sorts of arms and armor that had been neatly arranged by the knights, once garrisoned there. Sniffing at the wall's edge, the mouse Mouse wiggled its hind end. Before daringly leaping outward, narrowly catching the edge of a suit of armor below. Which also bore the same open palm of an embroidered silver hand on the face of the curious. Gathering itself upon the armor, the mouse squeaked again with joy as it continued its journey. Squeaked again with joy. Scampering along the armor's gorget, the mouse paused to nibble on a thick leather strap which secured a heavy pauldron to the cuirass, leaving the crude tradition of marking its journey had been repeated many times before by other mice. The crude tradition of marking leaving the strap nearly chewed through. Pausing to admire its handiwork, the mouse's eyes widened as the weakened strap began to sag and stretch under the weight of the heavy pauldron before snapping entirely. With a loud crash, the pauldron plummeted to the floor, sending the suit of armor weaving back and forth violently, tossing the terrified mouse as it did so. As the armor stand settled, the mouse shakily descended to the stone floor below. Passing its own terrified reflection in the polished steel of the resting pauldron. I think my cat's trying to break in. With a loud crash, the pauldron plummeted to the floor, sending the suit of armor weaving back and forth violently, tossing the terrified field mouse as it did so. Tossing the screaming mouse about as it did so. As the armor stand settled, the mouse shakily descended shakily descended to the stone floor below, passing its own terrified reflection in the polished steel of the resting pauldron. Moving to the far side of the room, the mouse arrived to its destination. Against the far wall rested a massive figure, entombed beneath a thick layer of moss and reeds which had grown in through the window above it. Rising to its hind legs, the mouse lifted its nose high into the air and loosed a mighty squeak. Mighty squeak in greeting. The figure remained silent and still. Huffed. The mouse inhaled, and once more released a tremendous squeak. Ena Nasha, Sal'journ's deep, disembodied voice echoed gently in Tarahi from beneath the weeds, the words carrying a soothing reassurance. Be at ease, little one. Shaka, his tone softened further. I hear you. Strands of the vines snapped, and mossy dirt crumbled to the floor as Sal'journ leaned forward to extend his hand out in invitation to the mouse. The mouse eagerly leapt into the... Eagerly. The mouse leaped into the palm of his hand and crouched as Sal'journ lifted it up to meet his piercing lich-fire eyes, whose cold blue flame wafted through the curtain of overgrowth draped over his head. Of hair draped over his... to the curtain of messy hair draped over them. Eagerly, the mouse leaped into the palm of his hand and crouched as Sal'journ lifted it up to meet his piercing lich-fire eyes, whose cold blue flame wafted through the curtain of messy hair draped over them. Noka Torway, he asked, spring has arrived? Gazing in bewilderment and awe of the hulking Tauren, the mouse silently hopped onto Sal'journ's shoulder and promptly began to dig at the mound of debris coating his fur. Tossing aside small mouthfuls of moss, as it burrowed for the pressure black strands of Sal'journ's thick mane. Comforted by the arrival of the small guest, Sal'journ surveyed the neglected armory. Rays of sunlight shining in through the open door reflected off the fallen pauldron's polished surface, illuminating the dusty suits of plate armor and webbed shields emblazoned with the sigil of the Knights of the Silver Hand, neatly aligning the curved walls of the room. Whew, that's a long sentence. In the center of the armory were the weapon racks, where the mighty warhammer, where the warhammer spears and swords stood at the ready. Tools of the heroic order of the Paladins, who had long since abandoned their once great fortress. Shano Tora, Sal'journ murmured, a long slumber. The mouse offered only a muffled squeak in reply as it continued its laborious duty as it continued its laborious duty. Sal'journ smirked and rested his head back against the wall, looking up at the spiral staircase overhead. The snow flurries that had blown through the window had ceased. The icicles that once hung from the wooden staircase above had melted, and the lanterns in the distant rafters above, and these still distant rafters above, had long since burnt out. And the lanterns swaying in the still distant rafters above had long since burnt out. Sal'journ's already small grin faded as he caught a glimpse of the mouse. Sal'journ's already small grin faded. Winter has passed, he sighed. Sal'journ knew that the arrival of spring meant the return of local herds who had wandered south to escape the frigid coastal air. It also meant that the traders who valued their furs would soon resume their transits along the roads to the south. I don't think I need that. Oops. This dustbin thing is not going to work. I delete too much. I suppose we have lingered long enough, he grunted. Shifting his massive hooves beneath him, Sal'journ clutched the windowsill for support and huffed deeply as he heaved himself to his feet. Standing upright in the armory, Sal'journ firmly patted his shoulders and forearms free of the remaining debris. Dust. I say debris a lot. I also say dust a lot. The architects and craftsmen of Hearthglen Fortress never imagined its inhabitants might one day include a fully grown Tauren. A fact made evident by the diminutive doorframe and tiny stairs of the spiral staircase leading up to the tower's turret. Sal'journ dwarfed his surroundings. Standing at over 8 feet tall and weighing half a ton, his thick musculature and dense bones made the imposing Tauren a sight to behold. Especially in a human dwelling. Sal'journ brushed aside the loose hair draped in front of his eyes, revealing the cracked and faded travel war paint that still... revealing the remaining cracked and faded travel war paint that still clung to his forehead and snout. Stepping forward, the stomp of his hooves and swish of his tail echoed in the tower's rafters. Carefully, Sal'journ ducked his head. Alright, that's a new. Boom. Woo! Alright, let's see if this works here. Is this too much? What do you want from me?
Chapter 4. Along comes the dawn from behind. The thick weave of grass emerges a field mouse, gripping the back of its head and shaking the moisture out of its fur with its tiny paws. The mouse...
The pauses are not good. How about Geralt?
Chapter 4.
Now.
Chapter 4.
Ooh, no. These are all like funny voices. How about Morgan Freeman?
From behind the thick weave of grass emerged a field mouse, gripping the back of its head and shaking the moisture out of its fur with its tiny paws. The mouse wrung itself free of the morning dew which had gathered.
Okay. Well, not perfect. Not useful either. Get rid of that. We got 6 minutes. What are we doing? That's what I'm missing. There we go. I think we can move this up to here. Winter has passed, he sighed. Sal'journ knew that the arrival of spring meant the return of local traders. The tower's walls that once offered sanctuary and respite had long since closed in on Sal'journ's massive figure. Leaving him with little choice but to meditate the days away to preserve his sanity. Meditate the days away. He could not remember the last time the fortress hosted more than inquisitive squirrel or lost deer. Actually, this needs to go up here a little bit more. The tower's steep walls that once offered sanctuary and respite had long since closed in on Sal'journ, leaving him with little choice but to meditate the days away. I guess my question is for myself, where am I going with that? The snowflakes that had blown through the windows had ceased. The icicles that hung from the wooden staircase above had melted, and the lanterns swaying in the still distant rafters above had long since burnt out. Sal'journ's already a small grin faded. Winter is past, he sighed. The tower's steep walls that once offered sanctuary and respite had long since closed in on Sal'journ, leaving him with little choice but to meditate the cold days away. He could not remember the last time the fortress hosted more than the inquisitive squirrel or lost deer. What do I want to do with this? What's his mood right now? He's excited winter's past because he's going to have people coming through. So he is a social animal. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of... Small grin grew to a smile. Winter is past. He sighed with relief. The tower's steep walls that once offered sanctuary and respite had long since closed in on Sal'journ, leaving him with little choice but to meditate the cold, dark days away. Hoping for summer to return. He could not remember the last time the fortress hosted more than the inquisitive squirrel or lost deer. And Sal'journ knew that the arrival of spring meant the return of local herds who had wandered south to escape the frigid cold air of winter. It also meant that the trade... Okay, there you go. Okay, so he's actually excited that the mouse is there. It's a source of relief for him because he's not going to be alone in this fortress because he has his friend who's going to come trade with him. Okay. Shifting his massive hooves beneath him, Sal'journ clutched the windowsill for support as he huffed deeply as he heaved himself to his feet. Standing upright, the Sal'journ firmly patted his shoulders. Okay, cool. I don't know how this is going to work when he has to go retrieve his rune blade, but... Oh, I do, actually. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, uh-oh, I hit enter. Da-da-da-da. Okay, interesting. So what I'll do is I'll make Sal'journ actually scared of his rune blade. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay, boom. So now we've got another source of conflict for Sal'journ, which is he has a, let's just say, a toxic relationship with his runeblade. He doesn't want it around, but he's compelled by his nature as a Death Knight to keep it with him. And it drives him mad. I'm going to have to explore that a little bit, but that is awesome. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Okay, cool. Well, that is it for tonight. That's just over an hour, so that's good. I started 20 minutes late. My bad. But I do this Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. I'm writing a book, and the goal is to finish this book by this summer and get it published. After that, my 5-year plan is to adapt this book into a script and screenplay and lead the production of a 2D animated short series, which is adapted from this story. We'll get there when we get there, one step at a time. I hope you join me tomorrow, bring your own story, and we'll work on these together. Have a good night.